All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Event Trader. We're going to do the week ahead piece here, put everything on the radar for what we need to be on the lookout for in the upcoming session. So, busy week next week, as we're well aware. We are looking at a Fed day, and that's going to capture plenty of attention. A number of other items to keep an eye out on those. So, I just want to run through. First, we'll go through the key themes, touch upon a couple items there, and then I'll go through each of the segments individually. First, central banks, the Fed expecting a 25 basis point cut. We'll be getting the projections. Of course, Powell will be speaking, so we'll have plenty to preview. I'll be talking with Brett in depth about that, and we'll cover that. Again, 25 basis points should be on the horizon. One quick side note from that, always curious to see who the first Fed speaker is going to be post-Fed, and it is none other than noted hawk Eric Rosengren. So I think that's pretty interesting first commentary that we're going to see from Fed members outside of Powell. But in addition to the Fed, a lot of other central bank activity going on, starting with Australia. And that's only their minutes, of course, but still will be interesting to see what the RBA has to say there. We got on Wednesday, right after the Fed, Brazil and the Bank of Japan. Curious to see if Bank of Japan's going to unload any more stimulus itself, following in the footsteps of the ECB. We also got the UK out on Thursday, and then China. They are going to be resetting their loan prime rate. I'll get into a little bit greater detail, but the loan prime rate is basically going to be replaced in our medium-term lending facility and really setting the tone for what China's benchmark rate's going to be. China is moving. They introduced this LPR in July, and September 17 there'll be about 265 billion yuan, approximately 37 billion US, of MLF loans that will be maturing that day. And what they're slowly doing is rolling over the MLF rates to their LPR. It's basically their new LIBOR. And it currently sits at 4.25%. Expectations are for them to cut it about 10 basis points to 4.15%. And this will be the PBOC's form of monetary policy. So we'll get into a little bit of greater detail with that, and certainly talk with Brett about that. I'm sure he'd be interested to provide his thoughts. But as you can see, plenty of action going on there on the monetary policy front. That's going to be a key theme for the week. In addition to that, we get Chinese macro data out Sunday night. So this is going to be greeting traders come Monday morning. I don't really know how much this data is going to have an impact. We certainly have a little bit of a better tone around trade and expectations for some further monetary stimulus and fiscal stimulus from China. So even if it's weak data, I don't know if the markets would really react all that negatively to it. Obviously, a surprise to the upside would perhaps lead to a bit of a squeeze on those things and really provide us with an upbeat tone in the markets going into the new week. So something to keep an eye out on here. I just don't know how much of an impact it's going to have considering all the stimulus that's being floated around out there. Sentiment data, another key theme for next week. We just got a better than expected Michigan sentiment number here in the U.S. today, and then Monday morning at 8:30 a.m., just before the market opens, we're going to be getting the Empire manufacturing number. So two key sentiment data points there from the U.S. And then, of course, we have the Philly Fed on Thursday. In Europe, we get their ZOO economic surveys for Germany and the Eurozone on Tuesday, and then a consumer confidence number expected out on Friday. One thing to keep in mind, the collection of data for these is before the ECB announcements, so I guess you got to keep that take that into consideration. Then the August end reports and conferences. So we aren't at Q3 earnings season yet. Obviously, we are starting to come up to the end of the quarter, and what we're going to be getting is a couple of key August end reports, most notably FDX, FedEx, of course, Adobe, ADBE, and General Mills, GIS. And this will provide us some good insight into the overall economy and corporate environment going into the end of September. Number of conferences too that I'll list out below that we're going to be on the lookout for: healthcare conference, a materials conference, which given the run in materials will certainly be of interest, but and a number of analyst days too with STX and Navistar. So these will all help start providing the picture of what we should be expecting for in Q3 earnings, which is now just about 3-4 weeks away. Looking at each individual segment, we got the U.S. macro here. Monday, September 16th, that Empire State manufacturing number I just talked about. Tuesday, we get the August industrial production figures, NAHB housing market index, so you get some more sentiment data, and the net long-term tick flows for July, looking for to see if China continues to unload treasuries. If it doesn't, that would be one more little olive branch for this trade talks. Wednesday, NBA mortgage applications as per usual. That August housing starts in building permits. One thing I'm looking for is talking with a real estate friend of mine who is noting a notable slowdown in the housing market. Said it's worse than what you're seeing in the report. So I'll be curious to see if we start seeing some weaker housing data that leads to a little bit of concern around the consumer. And then we got the FOMC announcement later on that day, which of course will have plenty more to offer at that time. And ahead we'll certainly be doing a preview with Brett. Thursday, we got the claims, Q2 current account balance, that Philly Fed number, as well as August existing home sales, and the leading indicators number, as well as natural gas. And Friday, Boston Fed President Eric Rosengren, who was a dissenter against the first rate cut, and if we get a second one, I'm assuming he's going to once again be a dissenter. Curious to see what he has to say, and he will be the first speaker post-Powell. Earnings, we discussed some of the key ones. Chewy has seen a little bit of heavy activity going on and ahead of its earnings, so a little concerned about that with regards to our investment in that. It's an eighth size investment piece. We also got FedEx and Adobe on Tuesday. Wednesday, General Mills, another one of my holdings. That one's been performing well, but certainly a little bit of a rollover as of late as we've seen some money roll out of the consumer staples area. And then sticking with the consumer, we got Darden. Given some of the run-up we have seen in some of these restaurant names, real curious to see how this report plays out. Darden's been holding near its, I think it's all-time, let me see if it's all-time or, yeah, all-time highs, right around that 127 level. International macro, we discussed the Chinese data that's coming out Sunday night. Monday, just as heads up, Japan is closed. We'll also get those RBA minutes from in Australia. Tuesday, we get China's expected to set the LPR rate. Let me just emphasize that date is not 100% certain, as is really not much of the Chinese data, but that's when those loans come due and when the expectations are for that to happen. We'll also get some China housing prices that morning, the zoo survey data, some manufacturing sales numbers from our neighbors to the north, and Australia's leading index, as well as Japan's trade balance. Wednesday, the China SWIFT payments report, as well as the UK inflation, Eurozone CPI revision, Germany's selling 30-year paper that day, and then we get Brazil and the Bank of Japan interest rate decisions later on. Thursday, Taiwan's got its interest rate decision. Also, I think the Swiss National Bank's out on Tuesday too, just to add that in for one more. But back to Thursday, we also get the Eurozone current account, UK retail sales, the BOE interest rate decision, and Canada's ADP jobs number. And then finally Friday, Germany PPI number. Bank of England with its quarterly report, and Canada retail sales, and finally Eurozone consumer confidence. And then on that corporate conference front, which we're really looking for some heads up on the outlook for these Q3 earnings report. We got Clack on its analyst day on Tuesday, Rambus as well. Goldman Sachs has got their Communicopia show going on that day. Seaport with the chemical and basic material. I have not had a chance to run through the presenters there, but obviously given the bounce in that sector, that'll be a key conference for us to follow. JP Morgan's got its US All-Stars out, and UBS's Renewables conference that day, as well as Citigroup with their small cap and mid cap growth kicking off, and Bank of America is going to be holding their healthcare conference starting on Tuesday. Wednesday, Scotiabank's Back to School is going to be out. We also have Buckingham Research's Industrial Conference and CL King's Best Ideas. And then Thursday, CNBC's got their Delivering Alpha, always key to see what the hedge funds have to say there. Really curious to get their take on some of the rollovers that we've been seeing. And then also Navistar and Seagate STX have their analyst days. Credit Suisse's consumer conference that kicks off that day. And Ivy Zellman has her housing summit. So a lot of housing data capped off by that housing summit, which will obviously be a key read for us for the consumer. But that's what we're looking at next week. Should be interesting to say the least. Certainly a lot of focus on the central banks and the activities that they're expecting to take part in. So going to be, and this all with the backdrop of us testing all-time highs. So going to be a fun week, certainly on the macro front, potentially on the micro front if we start getting some more guidance from the analyst days and these conferences, but a lot to put on the plate as we start prepping for Q3 earnings. With that said, that's going to do it for me. I will be keeping an eye on markets here for the final 20 minutes or so and providing any color on any activity that goes on. And I will be posting the recording of this for anybody that might have missed it.